Welcome to The Way Forward, the podcast that dives deep into how technology shapes our health and well-being. From digital wellness to tech innovation to the effects of electromagnetic fields, we cover the environmental, social, and physical implications of technology. Ready to navigate the digital landscape with confidence? Set your dial to discovery and tune in. You're listening to The Way Forward. Tara, thank you so much for joining the podcast. It's good to have you.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about you, especially in regards to like how you got to where you are now, because I know you started with like a little bit of a medical background. So give me a little synopsis of like how did that journey go?
Sure. Yeah. So I started out wanting to be a nurse and went into nursing school, and it was a program with a hospital. So I was working at a hospital and going to school at the same time. And I just learned so much through that experience. And especially being in the hospital, I started to see how it's really, I felt like not about the health and care of patients as much as it is a business. And that even if there are medical professionals who get into it with great intentions, they still have to follow the rules of the hospital. And the way that they set it up is just really about business and them making money more than it is about really caring for people. And that just really bothered me. So I started looking into other options. I actually got pregnant with my first baby when I was in that process and in the hospital working. And I worked at the OB floor for a while, and I decided that I didn't really like what I was seeing. And so I didn't want to birth at that hospital. So I started looking into other alternatives, and I started looking into natural birthing. And that's kind of how it all started for me. And I really started diving into that. I became super passionate about childbirth, and I wanted to have a home birth. So I tried for that with my first baby. And I ended up having a really long labor. I read all the books, but I didn't really focus on like one set of techniques that I would use during the labor. I just thought, I'll get all this information from everywhere, and then it'll just come back to me, during birth, and it'll be fine.
Yeah.
And it was totally doesn't work that way. When you're in labor, I think you really have to practice something for it to come back to you during labor, because otherwise you just go into this whole different part of your mind, and it's so instinctual. And
Yeah.
so it didn't really work out that way for me. And I ended up transferring to the hospital and wanted some pain relief. So I got the epidural. I had kind of your typical hospital birth, and I transferred to the hospital that I worked at. So I knew everybody and they knew me, and I could really advocate for myself because of that. And it went well, like a happy, healthy mom, healthy baby, but that's the most important thing about birth, but that's not the only important thing. And so my experience to me, wasn't a wonderful, great experience. And I realized, man, if anybody else had been in that situation, it would have gone very different for them, because I was able to advocate and knew the people, but most women don't. And so after that, I just really got into birth, and I started learning all the different childbirth methods. I became a hypnobirthing instructor, and I was doing that for a long time and teaching those classes. And I used hypnobirthing for my second baby, and it was amazing. And it was mostly the relaxation techniques that were just so useful, and also learning the hormonal physiology of the body when you are in labor, and just how important the mindset is, and being relaxed, and seeing birth as a natural process and not a medical emergency.
Mm.
And so I wanted to share that with moms and started teaching, and um, had amazing births after that. I have 4 babies now. My fourth one I finally got my home birth. The second one was at the birth center. The third one was at another hospital, but they were really well known in the area for being very supportive of natural birth. And I had a midwife who was in the hospital still. So I really wanted to try this place. And my fourth was a home birth, and she was 10 pounds, 6 ounces
Wow.
in 2.5 hours.
Oh, wow.
And it
That's
was the most
amazing.
amazing birth.
That's
I
amazing.
literally only had like one moment where I was even uncomfortable. I
Mm.
would say it was actually a pain-free birth. And I actually was using my own method that I had created at that by that time, which was a more spiritual method. The one thing about hypnobirthing was it didn't really have any spiritual aspect to it. And I'm a very spiritual person, so I wanted to add that in. And so I really felt like that just completely made it for me. Um, and it was an amazing experience. And I say I tried all the different birth locations for research purposes for my students.
It's so wild to me. So my mom was a labor and delivery nurse for many years, but she started taking that alternative route as time went on. So I'm the last of 5 babies. I was me and my older brother were the only ones to ever really go to public school. I was the only one to graduate high school. We were very like unschooled, like traveling all around, that kind of thing. And her medical background kind of pushed her more towards holistic lifestyle as well, because she was seeing that like almost every time there is some kind of intervention that leads to the next intervention. And so it's like, okay,
Right.
well, the epidural lowers your blood pressure. Now your blood pressure is like, it's like just, it goes, this like sequence happens almost every time that leads to, not every time. I know there are, awesome doctors out there as well that aren't going to just go
Right.
straight to a
Yeah.
C-section, but you know what I mean? So she kind of started going on a route. So I actually witnessed my first home birth, or it was at a birthing center, like, but at the midwife's house when I was 10. And so I was like, watched my sister give birth when I was 10. I can't believe now having children of my own. I couldn't believe she had like the entire family in the room when she but it was so normal to me because I had older siblings that were so much older that I was very young when they were giving birth. But so I had my oldest at home, but then we had to transfer to the hospital after because he ended up having something going on with his intestines. He ended up having jejunal atresia, so no internal intestine. And we ended up being in the hospital for like 6 weeks. And after giving birth at home, which I was so glad I gave birth at home because I ended up having like a good 12 hours with him. He nursed all of these things that ended up leading to what I believe to be a lot speedier recovery. Like he ended up not needing he had a G tube and a central line, all these things that he said he was going to need for 2.5 years. And like he may never eat through his mouth again because he's going to have oral adversion and trauma to the mouth and all these things. But I really believe that because he was able to nurse and like have that time, that he was able to recover a lot quicker and go back to nursing after everything happened. So he healed a lot faster than what they had seen previously or ever before. That surgeon specifically had ever seen before. So it was really fun. But when we were in the hospital, we talked to like 27 different nurses, and every nurse was so shocked that I had a home birth. Like they were shocked. Only one of them, there was like, I remember one came in at like 3 a.m. and they come in at like every hour they're in there, and we had made home in there. So we had set up mattresses, we had like hung things on the walls, I had all my supplements, we had like because I'm like, I'm gonna bring home here. We had essential oils diffusing. It was a vibe, and nurses would come in because of the vibe. Like they're like, it smells so good in here, and they're just come hang out. But anyway, so this one was like came in, she was like, it's just that like we only see like, because PICU and NICU stuff, it's like they only really see the 3% of births that end, that have some kind of traumatic event. And so they all are like so afraid of like the home birth. I got so many nasty, like, oh, like this girl like had a home birth. I'm like, wow, that's so weird for me because it's so normal to me. Like the thought of having a child in the hospital literally makes me like, like it makes me like hard to breathe. But it's just so interesting how it's different for everyone because, like, I don't know what your philosophy is, but I would say do what you feel most comfortable with. Like where are you going to be the most comfortable? But I just thought it was so interesting. I'm like, that's not where I'm most comfortable at all. Quick break in the episode, you guys, because I got to tell you about the amazing sponsor, Aries Tech. Aries Tech creates cream of the crop, top of the line EMF protection devices that do not interfere with your signal, but all of their technology is actually backed by peer-reviewed, patent, and published research that has been going on for almost 20 years. They were originally funded a couple decades ago by the military to create a medical device that would help protect men and women who are working on radio signal towers without interfering with the signal, and have since become a consumer product as we have become more of a technological world. They're also used by professional athletes like Tiki Barber from the NFL Giants and Macy Barber from the UFC for performance optimization tools. You can go to their website, ariestech.com, and check out some really amazing studies where they've done some EEGs to show how these devices are affecting your baseline brain activity. It's really, really cool. I personally have one on me right now near me because I have my phone, my computer, my camera, everything going on all at once in an office building where everyone has their own Wi-Fi. So I don't mess around. Check them out, ariestech.com. Use code INTUNE, INTUNE, TUNE 30 for 30% off your entire order.
Yeah. Yeah, me neither. But that's exactly what I tell my students too is, hey, if it makes you more comfortable, you feel safer in the
Right.
hospital, then you should be in the hospital, you know? You don't want to go somewhere that's going to stress you out. That's defeating the whole purpose.
Yes.
The main thing you want is just to be comfortable and feel safe and be able to relax and allow your body to do what it needs to do, you know?
Okay, so tell me a little bit more about your birth strategies and like how did you come about them and what does that look like? Like how has it impacted people?
Yeah, I mean, I experienced or hypnobirthing, and so that is a lot of it, which they're really the first ones to teach a meditation or relaxation practice for labor.
So so is that what hypnobirthing is like breathing exercises?
There's breathing exercises, but then there's also guided meditations that you listen to.
Okay.
And you listen to them over and over and over again throughout the pregnancy so that when you are in labor, you can listen to it and it triggers that learned response in the body, right? Just like Pavlov's dogs, where they would ring the bell and then feed the dogs. And they learned that the body learns an automated response to certain stimuli, right? And so using a guided meditation trains the woman's body to release all those oxytocin hormones and endorphins that make you feel better and take pain away, and helps you relax. And so through the meditation practice during pregnancy, your body gets this repeated over and over and over. And then during the labor, it just automatically, boom, it happens. And as soon as you start playing that, the body knows, oh, this means we're relaxing. You'll do it laying down. You'll use essential oils, and then the smell of the oil will remind the body, hey, this means we're relaxing, and it'll release all those beneficial hormones to help the labor go faster and be more comfortable. And so that's what my class now does too. But just like I said, I added some like Bible verses and scriptures and more of a spiritual, supernatural meditation type stuff, and included that. But it's still guided meditations, and I think that was really, really the key and helpful. I mean, first you need to know what your body's going to do. That's one thing. Is a lot of women, they're not prepared because they don't understand what the body's actually going to be doing or why. And so when you first start feeling it, immediately, because of all the horror stories we've heard, because of, there seems to be this competition of who had the worst birth experience, and we all want to like tell each other the horror stories.
It's so true.
I'm not demeaning those at all. I mean,
No.
my heart breaks for those women that have those experiences. But when we tell each other that all the time, that's what you think birth is going to be like. Just like what you said about your mom and your siblings, you get to see that was just normal to you. And so that sets the idea of what is birth going to be like for me. And when we tell each other the horror stories, when you watch the movies and it's always, dramatized, and it's always something horrible is happening to make it entertaining, right? But a normal birth is actually quite boring. You know, you just kind of sit there. Like most people didn't even
Get me
really
some coconut
know
water
that
and
I was in
berries.
labor. What?
Get me some coconut water and berries and leave me alone.
Oh, yeah, yeah. You know, you just like almost look like you're sleeping if you're
Yep.
really relaxing, you know, and just letting the body do what it needs to do. But um yeah, you see all those crazy stories and things, and that sets your mind with, okay, so when my body starts doing something, I feel something, it's going to be bad. Like, and I just need to assume that it's going to be bad. And when, you know, when you focus on something, that's where you're going to go. So
Yeah.
if that's what you think birth is going to be, unfortunately, chances are that's probably what it's going to end up being.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I was in labor for almost 3 days with my first, because it was
me
almost like
too.
it was almost like there was a communication happening where it was like when I would start getting a little bit fearful, it would
Mm,
back up. And so I feel like that would have been very helpful. And I definitely want to try that for my third, if if we have a third, of like
yeah,
really practicing. Cause usually I just go in like survival, like primal mode. And you're just like, okay, you know that this is,
yeah,
going to be painful and you're just riding through. But I really
yeah,
like, and I know a lot of, like, now as time has gone on and I've listened to more uplifting and vibrant birth stories of people having these very powerful experiences. I'm like, okay, maybe it doesn't have to be this, like, you know, crazy painful for the entire, you know what I mean?
yeah,
Maybe
right,
there are other ways.
right.
I'm
Yeah,
like,
it
yeah,
really affects you. Your mindset really, really affects you.
yes.
And that's also what got me into where we are now. With learning that through childbirth, I started, you know, after I had my fourth baby, I was just teaching. I was teaching in a couple of the hospitals, in Phoenix, where we're from. And then I started to realize that in the suburbs, and you know, we had just a typical life. My husband worked 9 to 5 job. I was home with the kids and I ran my own businesses, and we've always homeschooled, so they've always been home with me. But I just started to realize that there's so many things about normal suburban life that are just so stressful. For one thing, like, we were always busy, busy, busy. Like, you have so much pressure to keep your schedule full, you know, keep the kids busy, and just to go, go, go all the time.
Mm.
And also there was always so much noise, just so much background noise, and cars going by, and the air conditioners of the neighbors, and the airplanes overhead, and the TV going all the time, you know. And I started to realize that it was really affecting my mindset, and I wanted to try something different. I just needed more peace. I was really struggling with anxiety,
Mm.
and when the kids were little, you know, just worrying about them and everything going on in the world, and their futures too, you know, and keeping them safe in our neighborhood. And
Yes.
just, we, you know, we'd have
I
like
feel
stray
that.
dogs going around, and
Yes.
like all kinds of stuff, like crazy stuff happening all the time. Like one time we woke up and the the police SWAT like team was in our backyard, and they were saying that we all needed to get down because they were going to be shooting at the guy behind us because he had done some crazy illegal stuff
Oh
in the
my
house right behind us.
gosh.
Yeah, we didn't even
What?
live in like a bad neighborhood or nothing, you know. It was just a normal neighborhood,
Wow.
and it's just stressful, you know. And so um when the pandemic hit, my husband's job went all online. And so we thought, well, we don't have to be here anymore then. You know, we can just go wherever we want to go. Let's get out of here. And so we actually bought a motorhome for a year and lived in it for a year and traveled around the country trying to find where we wanted to go,
I
because we were kind of
love this.
a little bit tired of the desert, you know, and wanted like a green environment and not just the dirt of the desert. But
Yes.
what's funny is after a year of that, we ended up coming back to the desert.
You're like, this is
So
where I belong.
yeah,
This is my
it's where we
essence.
belong.
Yeah.
So we came up here to, my parents actually had two properties. They had a house in Mesa, which is down in the Phoenix area. And then they had this 22-acre piece of land that me and my dad started building a cabin on when I was about 12 years old. And we finished it about 90%, but then something really tragic happened. He had a really good friend who was up here and he would help us with the cabin too. And he ended up never being a smoker in his life. He ended up getting lung cancer.
Wow.
And he would come down to Phoenix and live with us during the chemo treatments. And he ended up passing away. And it was my dad's really good friend. So I think that that really took all the wind out of his sail, you know? And so he just abandoned the land and abandoned the cabin, and it sat here for about 15 years. And the rats got it, and they totally took it over. And it was such a huge project. My parents kept saying, you know, you guys can take it if you want, finish it. And we kept saying, no, there's no way. We don't want to take that on. But turns out we were so desperate to leave the city that we were just like, and we fix and flip houses. So my parents were ready to sell their house. My dad's wanting to retire. They are from Texas. We're all from Texas originally.
nice.
So they wanted to move back to be close to family and stuff again. And so we fixed and flipped their house and sold it in Mesa. And then we decided, okay, we'll take on the property too, and we'll just fix it, flip it, get rid of it, and then go to wherever we, you know, decide to move. But now that we're here, we just love it. And we love the environment and the craziness of the high desert. It's pretty extreme.
That's
But
amazing. What a
yeah,
blessing, really.
so
That's
now we're here.
amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, it
Okay,
was
so
awesome.
I saw that you had well water. Did you guys do that, or was that already established before y'all got the property?
Well, we got the well about 20 years ago back when he first got the property. But actually it got struck by lightning. So when we took the property over, we had to have it fixed, and the whole thing pulled and a new pump put in because it had gotten struck by lightning and didn't work anymore. And so now we have a solar well, and it's really
Awesome.
great, pristine water. And it's 220 feet down to get to water here. And a lot of people have to haul their water. So that's one really tricky thing about this area is you could go drill a well, you know, and go 300 feet and you might still never hit water. So
Wow.
yeah, and it's expensive to drill a well, you know, and you still got to pay even if you don't get water. So it's a little tricky. You got to be real careful where you pick a spot. But
Yeah. That's so cool. I love that for you.
thank you.
That's so
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah,
Okay,
the water's
so
so good.
you've been on this like homestead journey for almost 2 years?
Yeah, almost 2 years now.
How are you staying connected to society? I mean, I feel like that's such a big question that people have because we're also making this transition. I feel you so
Mm,
deeply about like it's time. Our kids are like 5 and 3. We live on 2 acres now, but it's still like there's no privacy, and it's just like I want to be away. I want to be
yeah.
away,
Yeah.
and I want like we really feel that. So that's where our transition is as well. But I feel like the question that people always ask is like, how do you stay connected? Like for me, I run my businesses solely online, and
Yeah.
I am able to stay home and do that. But what does that look like for you guys? And how do you manage that like connectivity, but also like the disconnect?
Mm. Well, for one thing, me and my husband both were basically only children. He's an only child. My one sibling is 13 years older than me. So by the time, you know, I was 5, he was already moved out of the house. And we're both introverts and we're used to being alone. So alone isn't that big a deal to us. It's not a negative thing to us. We really enjoy it.
Mhm.
And um we do have online businesses. You know, I still have my class online and I communicate with my students frequently. And I'm on social media. So I have to post a lot, and internet was a really important thing for us. And it's funny because I get you wouldn't believe the horrible, mean comments that I get.
Really?
Yes,
Like you're
about,
not truly off grid.
yeah, you're
Oh
not
my
off
goodness.
grid, you're on
Stop.
the internet, you have social media, Um, but I think it's just there's so many different meanings to the word off grid now.
Right.
I say I'm off grid because I have my own power, my own water, I'm not on any utility grids. Now, I'm also striving for self-sufficiency because diet is so incredibly important to me. That's something I've always taught in my classes to pregnant mamas, that, your diet is really going to help with your labor and keeping you fit and all of that, to be able to do the work, because
Right.
giving birth is like the equivalent of running a marathon. So you need your body to be in good shape. It'll really help. But
Yeah.
also the food we eat, I've just always really been into health, and the food that we eat is, really getting questionable.
Yes. Agreed.
So there's a lot of crazy stuff going on in our food systems right now.
Yes.
And I wanted to grow my own that I knew was going to be clean, healthy food for me and my family. And so that was a big motivating factor, so that we could have big gardens, we could raise animals. We have all kinds of birds you can probably hear in the background. I got
Hmm.
turkeys and chickens and ducks, and we have rabbits. We don't eat those. They're way too
They're
cute.
way too cute.
They're way too cute. We use them for fertilizer for the poo. We
Amazing.
use their poo for fertilizer for the gardens. And we love them a lot.
So were you
But
just learning all of this as you go, or were you raised like this? Like, how did
yeah,
no.
I wasn't raised like this at all. No. And we have, like, if you go back a generation or two, my family was all into farming. They were all farmers. But with my parents, my dad, he was the first one in his family to go to college, and he's an electrical engineer. So, he's always had a big career, and um, we we were just living in the city, and um, a couple of years before we came out here, I started preparing. We had this goal
Mm,
that, eventually we were going to get the land and we were going to homestead. And we didn't really plan for it to be here, but that was our goal. So I started preparing by just having a backyard garden. And learning to grow in the desert has been so helpful because it's very tricky. And we actually acquired some backyard chickens as well. We were on a family ice cream night in the middle of Phoenix, Arizona, in like a strip mall, and a chicken walked up, and and it must have escaped, from some neighboring yard somewhere in the middle of the city. It was so random and weird. But immediately I was like, told my husband, get the chicken. We got to get
ah,
the chicken. They were all calling security, somebody come get the chicken. And I was like, no, 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 I'll take the chicken. So we got that one. We got a couple other ones. We started having backyard chickens
I love
in just
it.
our neighborhood and our tiny yard, just to get to know how those animals are, because I'd never had them before. So that helped a lot. And then just started reading books. I'm a big reader, so I read books. My husband prefers doing things on Audible or,
That's me.
YouTube, or yeah, anything like that. We would just learn as much as we could learn to prepare. So we started learning about gardening and building, and we did fix and flip houses, and that is in my family. That's what all my family has pretty much always done, is build. They've always been builders. So I had a lot of prior knowledge on that, which was very helpful for
Yeah.
us to build our outhouses, like the chicken coop. We built a greenhouse.
I
We
just saw
built a
that. It's so cool.
garden.
Hmm.
Yeah, thank you. And we've also built some tiny cabin Airbnb rentals, and we
On your
have those.
property?
Yeah, we have
I
those
love
here on the
it.
property. Yeah,
Very, very cool.
it's a beautiful location here. And we have a great view. So it works out great, and we're booked like every weekend. So it's been really, really good to have the rentals. And I think that that's definitely something that people could check into if you want to do this. And then, like I said, we have the internet businesses. So we do have Starlink. That's how we stay connected, to answer your question and go back a little bit, but that's how we
Wow.
stay connected. We got Starlink,
Is
and it
that
has
what says
been
how long ago
awesome.
was that?
We've had it for over a year now, I think.
Wow. Okay. I didn't
Yeah.
realize it was like that distributed already.
Yeah, yeah. That's what a lot of people out here in this area have. The cell service is pretty bad, so you can't really use, your cell phone for internet and stuff here. Where I'm at, I am in a little valley, and then there's this ridge all around us, except for one side where you can see down the valley, and that's the really cool view we have. But I literally have only one neighbor, and they're 20 acres away. And if I look around everywhere else, I don't even see any other people.
Mm.
There's maybe a house way up on the ridge, but that's how rural we are. We're down a dirt road that takes about 15 minutes to go before you can hit a paved road, which then you go down the paved road for a while before you see any houses. And the nearest town is about 30 minutes away. So we're very rural, but the internet's great. Actually, the internet's better here
I know.
with
I'm like, your
them.
video quality is amazing.
It's
I've
actually
been
better
waiting for it to go
here.
out. Like she's in the middle of nowhere. This is gonna go out
I
eventually.
know, it's crazy. Like I was a little like freaked out because I'm like, this is kind of a little too Terminator-y for me, but it does work. It works really well. And actually I have better internet here than I did at my house in the city.
That's awesome. And I feel
Yeah.
like with I think like the off grid thing, like with getting comments that way, I'm like, okay, well, if you lose internet, you can still survive. To me, that's off
Yeah.
grid. It's like if you
Right.
lose water or lose electricity or you lose food supply, you're kind of screwed if you don't already have those systems in place. Internet's
Yeah.
one of those things where it's a perk to have internet. It's also when you have children and like you live 20 acres away from a neighbor, like you want your children to have the ability to call someone if like the land, you know what I mean? Like if something's
Yeah.
going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
But at the same time, if the internet was cut off for whatever reason, like you would still have your basic needs covered. And I think that that
Yeah.
is really off grid to me.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, that's what I feel like too. But and I won't need internet if if it gets cut
Exactly.
off, or if anything crazy like that happens. I'm not going to need the internet. I don't need my job. But yeah, you're right. We still have our water. We'll still have an ability to make food for ourselves, and that's really what we're also trying to do is I want to set up everything so that it's regenerative on its own, so that I don't have to have a lot of inputs from outside. Because that's how a lot of conventional homesteading and farming is done. Even a lot of the homesteaders that I follow online, I love learning from them. I have learned so much from them. That's definitely one of my main ways that I've prepared and learned, is just by following people online and watching their content. But they most of the time are on the grid. So they still have electricity. And electricity has been the biggest adjustment for us because they'll have these beautiful greenhouses. And I just made a post about this, that are like made out of the recycled windows. And that's a big trend right now. And it's beautiful. But the only problem for us is that it doesn't hold heat. And we live
Mm.
actually in the high desert. So in the winter, it's quite cold and we get a lot of snow, and we're in the mountains. So we're at a higher elevation. And our greenhouse wouldn't hold enough heat if it was made out of windows, because they just are so inefficient. And all of these ladies have heaters that they can plug in, and heat mats that they put under their seedlings and stuff.
Yes.
And I'm like,
We got
well,
bougie
that's
homesteading
that's
going
not
on.
gonna work for me. Yeah.
That is
So
totally it's almost like a trend right now. kind of the bougie homesteaders. Like you still
Yeah.
got all your amenities, but you got some
Yeah.
chickens and a couple goats.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, and you can do that. And I totally think that people should do that.
Yeah, especially if that's your only choice.
If that's your only choice, yeah, and that's where you're at, you should absolutely do that because it's better than nothing. I mean, you
Right.
should have a way to grow food, and that's one thing that I've been really my eyes have been open a lot about lately is just how dependent we are on the grocery store.
Mm,
And we just don't, there
yeah.
everyone used to have gardens. If you go
Right.
back, one or two generations, they all had gardens. They all had food storage that they had stocked up and canned themselves. Canning's my next adventure I have to learn. I haven't done that one yet,
That's a big
but
one.
yeah, I have to learn that one. But, they all had that and now we don't. Nobody does. And so there's been some stuff happen in the world lately in our country, like with the pandemic and other things where there were shortages and people are now starting to have their eyes open, seeing like, oh gosh, what would happen if the
Yeah.
grocery store
And
shut
not from
down
a
or
fear mongering, like not from a fearful place. I think the
yeah,
reality is there's just so many situations. Like it's not, for me, it's like there's not just one reason to do it.
yeah,
There's probably 15. Like
yeah,
there's
yeah,
so many
for sure.
reasons to do it, to have that sense of sustainability, not just because, oh, well, we could have an EMP or like, whatever it is. Like,
Yeah.
yes, those things, those conversations are happening or whatever, but
Yeah, they can always happen,
yeah,
but
the reality is like I just don't even want to have to like load my kids up to go to the grocery store. Like
yeah,
I just
so
want, and I
true.
want them to have the knowledge, like to be able
Yeah.
to like,
Yeah.
to be able to build an apothecary instead of a medicine cabinet. That's kind of like my mental, like, okay, I want my children to be able to have the knowledge to build their apothecary instead of building a medicine cabinet and really understand. Like that's where I've been focusing because we're in a rental. And so it's like, okay,
Mhm.
I can start there with like herbs and tinctures and like
Yeah.
essential oils and like what is this for and what is this for? And like it's just like where can you begin? I think that this is a really good conversation for people who are like maybe renting an apartment or living in the suburban area. It's like you don't have
Yeah.
to wait to start. Like you can start educating yourself, but there's
Mhm.
also things that you can start doing like in your home. You can start, like I saw that you did like the green onion thing. It's like you can get organic green onions from the store and then just put them in a bowl of water after you're done
Yeah.
using them and let them grow again. It's like it's things that is it's silly that that people aren't doing those things when it's just readily available right there and we're just tossing it. We're just
Yep.
tossing out our opportunity to like keep growing food for ourselves. And with the rental, it's like I was so hesitant for so long because I was like, I don't want to like plant seeds here if this isn't where we're gonna be. Like I didn't want to put my energy into it. And then eventually it was like,
Yeah.
no, I have to learn the skills. Like we had chickens and then we did
Right.
the garden and then we built an outdoor shower, just kind of like playing with how to build things. We just
Yeah.
it was like, no, we just need to start because first we're planting seeds for whoever's coming here next. But
Yeah.
also we have to learn this. It's going to be so much easier to have some skills because there's also going to be so many things that we need to learn when we get land that like
Right.
get as many resources and skills as you can in your own
Yeah.
home right now wherever you are, and then you can learn how to can later
Yeah. Absolutely.
or how to
And it's
freeze
so
dry.
different, yeah. And it's so different to just learn something from reading it or watching someone else do it, but versus you actually getting your hands in the dirt. You learn so much more, especially in your area. That's the key with, I think I've learned with gardening is you have to know your environment, your biome.
Yes.
And until you actually get the seeds in the ground, there's so many things that you're not going to know about that'll destroy your garden later. And you'll lose all your effort. But if you just try it now, you'll see what's going on and be able to next time you plant, prepare for all of that.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, practice is so important.
Yeah, I couldn't believe what we actually grew. I was like, wait, okay, like our, like this area, because people say like in this area of Texas is like it's so hard to grow things. So it's like we had so many different vegetables growing fairly easily. So I was like, that's really good to know, that it is possible.
Yeah.
That's so
Yeah.
awesome. Oh, Okay, so I have one last question. So I connected with you because you were using the same EMF protection that I use. And so
Mm,
I wanted to know a little bit about like what was your aha? Do you have an aha moment? Like for me, it was kind of like one thing led to the next. Because even though my mom had this knowledge, like I was still in high school, I was still doing the high school Texas thing, which is like going out, eating junk food, running to Sonic at 2 a.m., playing beer pong, like that was my high school years. And so it took me like really getting sick with like chronic sinus infections from getting my wisdom teeth removed to really start paying attention to the sugar and the gluten, all that stuff. That was like my first aha moment. And then my
yeah.
second aha moment with like EMFs and like, oh, there's more than just what I'm putting in my body. Like that was like step one. Okay, what I'm putting in my body's not just affecting me physically, it's affecting my mental health. Like that was what I was really realizing. It was like when I'm drinking out, alcohol or eating sugar or, loads of wheat, gluten, I am actually like struggling mentally. I have a brain fog. I'm like emotionally just abnormal, hormones all over the place. And so it took me like cutting all of that out to like really realize as I was integrating it back in that like, oh, I have like food sensitivities. And then later
Mm,
on found out I had the MTHFR. So it all made sense, but I didn't know that at the time. But then with my first son, what really was the aha moment for EMFs was like, okay, they like I did everything, right? I was eating all organic and I was doing my folate, my folate instead of folate, I did all the things. And so I was just so mentally struggling with why did this happen? Because for me, yes, I understand that things just happen, but also like there's something physical, you know what I mean? There has to be something that led to something that led to something, you know what I mean? In my mind,
yeah.
everything kind of leads to something else. But like they just left me, in the hospital 6 weeks, we are leaving, and they're like, oh, it just happens sometimes in the first couple weeks of gestation. And the only thing, and I'm not claiming that this is what happened, but this was my aha moment. The only thing that I could really think of besides finding out I had the MTHFR, and so there were probably things that I could have been doing, was EMFs, because we lived in this like 200 square foot loft apartment, and we were sleeping by our Wi-Fi router for like the first couple months of my gestation. And when he told me it was in the first couple weeks of your gestation that this would have happened, I was like, that was the thing I immediately thought of was like that, like the Wi-Fi. We literally slept next to the Wi-Fi for like the first couple of months of my pregnancy, and I didn't even really think about it. It was like
Oh,
just out of sight, out of mind. And so
yeah.
that's kind of what led me in that direction. And like, will I ever be able to prove that? No. But like that's
Yeah.
what opened it up. So where do you feel like I feel like it's just like you peek behind one curtain and you realize like, oh, that's not what I thought to be true. And then it just leads you to start peeking behind all the other curtains and finding the truth.
Yes. Yes.
So what do you feel like was your aha moment, if you have one?
Yeah.
Or was it
I,
gradual?
well, kind of both, because I was already kind of starting to get into peeking behind all the curtains through the medical field,
Right.
because of my background, and then teaching the childbirth classes and stuff. But then I also got very sick, and I also have MTHFR.
Nice.
So
We're the weird ones.
I totally know what you're talking about. Yeah. Um, and I got really sick. I think it was 2 years after I had my fourth baby. And I think that it was triggered by getting an IUD.
Mm.
And so then I started looking into, IUDs and birth control. And, we had
That's a
just
whole
had
other conversation
four
we have
baby.
to
Yeah, I
have.
know. I know. We need to do more podcasts.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had just had four babies back to back to back. So um, we wanted a break for a while.
Right.
And so I
You're like,
was
I gotta
like,
learn how to can eventually, guys. Come on. Give me a break.
I, I knew because of my medical background that birth control is not great,
Right.
and that there were some risks and all of that. But I thought, I really think that I want to try it, like just have this put in, and um, it'd be easy and simple, and that it was the best option of all the options.
Mm-hmm.
So, because we had actually already tried doing family planning and a couple of the natural methods, which
Yeah.
obviously I wasn't that great at. But so the IUD though, I think it just totally threw my hormones for a loop,
Mm.
and put everything out of whack, and I started having crazy symptoms, and I got really sick too. And I had still had my pregnancy baby weight, from the prior pregnancy. And it was actually the heaviest I had ever been in my life. I think I was like 215 or so pounds. And when I got sick, I suddenly lost about 60 pounds within like
Wow.
4 months. And it was just because I was so sick, I couldn't keep food down. Anytime I ate, I would start getting like stomach cramps, and I would have to run to the bathroom, and I would have nausea and vomiting and
Mm.
just all these crazy symptoms. So I started going to all these doctors, everybody's doing blood tests and all these tests and scans, and everything was coming back normal. And they were all just saying, I don't know what it is. We don't know. And I think it also had to do with a lot of stress, because
Yeah.
like I told you earlier, I was really starting to struggle with anxiety, which maybe could have been because my hormones were all out of whack.
Right.
Um, but then I was having this anxiety, and I think that I was just eating a typical diet too. And I actually knew that I had had a gluten allergy prior, because when I was about 18 years old, I had some testing done, and they confirmed that I had a gluten allergy, or sensitivity allergy. It's kind of hard to tell which one, but
Yeah.
I completely cut out gluten. And I did that for, I think it was about 7 years. And it helped tremendously. But then after having all the babies and life got busy, I started introducing it back again, and I seemed to be okay. So I just started kind of going back into bad habits of eating a lot of processed foods and sugar and junk food, to survive the mom years, right?
Yes.
And the little
That happened
years.
to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're just
Because
coming out of that.
I totally know that they can be a lot of work and rough and very little sleep.
Yeah.
And so, but I think that that really affected me, and it threw my body into just this crazy cycle of rejecting everything, making me fast all the time. I lost all this weight, and I started doing all these things to heal. And that's when I really started learning about um, EMF, and about using sauna treatment and
Mm.
red light therapies and all of these other modalities that you can do. And I started doing them all, and man, I felt amazing. I completely healed.
Wow.
I got super fit and healthy, and then I started realizing I've got to watch what I eat, and really being careful about my diet. And I think that that's really what woke me up, like a big sudden wake up was that experience. Because I was literally on my deathbed. Like, there was one at the very end, I hadn't eaten for 5 weeks, and I couldn't have anything. And I was going to all the doctors. I was even seeing natural doctors
Mm-hmm.
and telling them, like, I'm gonna die. Like, I haven't eaten in 5 weeks. This isn't normal. Like, what
Help
am I doing
me.
here?
Yeah.
Yeah, and all I could have is maybe some shakes, like those nutrition shakes and stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and they really had no answer. And so that was a huge supernatural thing for me too, I think, and a spiritual experience as well that really got me to focus on my spirituality a lot, but also just my diet and how we care for ourselves. And we started traveling a little bit before we got the motorhome, and we would go out of the city. And I noticed every time we went out of the city, the ringing in my ears would stop. I had
Mm.
horrible ringing in my ears. We would get headaches. Me and my husband would get headaches pretty frequently, like not all the time, but more than I had ever gotten headaches. And then I realized all these little, like, small symptoms that can be associated with other things, and they're also so easy to just kind of, it's not
Yeah.
that big a
It's so
deal.
normal. Everyone's
Yeah.
experiencing it. It's just
Yeah.
part of being this age or
Right.
this a mom or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's just probably something else. It'll eventually
Yeah.
go away. But we started to realize, hey, every time we go out of town and we go out into the mountains, all this stuff stops. And
Yes.
and so we really started thinking, I swear it's got to be like all these 5G towers that they're putting up
No, I
everywhere.
mean, we went to Phoenix because a good friend of mine lives there, and I know you have to go, so we can wrap this up very shortly. But we were walking like across the crosswalks, and there's 5G towers at the crosswalk with warning signs saying "Do not stand within 200 feet." And you're like, okay, it's literally at the crosswalk. I'm like, this is crazy. It's so
Yeah.
far. Like where I live in Waco, they haven't like deployed the 5G like that yet, but in Austin and Dallas, like an hour either way, they do. And I feel like you can feel it. Maybe it's just
Yeah.
me, but I
Yeah.
do think like, and I know people have hypersensitivity and they really can hear it
Yeah.
and feel it
Yeah.
when they're coming in. It's wild, wild,
Yeah.
wild.
So
Okay.
that
Yeah,
Yeah,
go
so
ahead.
that's when we really started thinking about EMF too. And so that's one thing that I thought was really important is since we do still have to have internet, which I really wish we didn't have to have it at all, but since we do have to have internet for both of our jobs, I want to make sure that we stay protected. So we have our life tunes all over the house.
Yeah.
And we also have one that I keep in the truck. So every time we go to town, because town, which is thankfully 30-minute drive away, they already have a 5G tower.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's
yeah.
awesome. Yeah, I have one on my keychain and I'm like everywhere. And then like now that my kids, he's going to like a, kind of like a small nature school. And so I just like put one in his backpack. It's like
Oh,
everyone
good.
there is
Yeah.
protected. We're good.
I just
Okay.
can't believe that they're putting these things in schools. Like
No, I know.
in
I've been doing
Phoenix, they
so
have
much
them right
research about it.
next to the little kids' schools. I mean, it's just insane to me.
And yeah, it is. It's so wild. I've seen a lot of parents coming together to get it removed or to get it shut off. Like a lot of it's happening a lot, it seems like right now. Okay,
Yeah.
I know you have to go. So tell us how people can find you, where to connect with you, all the things.
Yeah, so I am on Instagram. Instagram is my main platform right now. I'm trying to expand, so I'm on X too, and I'm gonna start posting on YouTube again so I can do more long form videos. But on Instagram, I'm the Maverick Mama, and yeah, just follow, connect, reach out to me. I love answering questions. So I always tell everybody, don't hesitate to send me a message. I love to talk to people. I'm an introvert, but I'm also like, I love to have my social time too, you know?
Yeah.
So I love talking to people and I'm happy to answer any questions. And if you, I have a lot of people who are interested in moving out, away from the city, and they hit me up for just advice on how to find land or how to make sure you're picking the right land.
Mm.
So I'm always happy to help because this is really my new passion.
Okay,
My
I'm gonna hit you up.
passion,
I'm gonna
my passion was childbirth, and I still do love it, and I want to share all my knowledge because I've been in it now
Well,
for
now you're in a
12
different phase
years.
of life though.
But yeah,
Yeah.
now I'm going into a different phase of life, and now my passion really is moving out away from the city, and I'd love to see the rural communities um become a thing again. I feel like our last generation was told to leave all the rural communities, and now we need a lot of people to go back to them and get back into farming and self-sufficiency and growing your own food and all that, because I think there's so much unfortunate corruption in the
Mhm.
world, and in our country, and even when it comes to especially corporations, the food that we eat is so bad because these corporations are, greedy, and they're trying to make a lot of money, and so they're going to use the cheapest, most low quality ingredients that they can possibly get,
Yeah.
and then they're not telling people about it.
Yeah.
And the way that we can battle that, is by not buying their products anymore. And if you're growing your own food, guess whose food you're not going to buy anymore? So
Yeah, especially if
grow
you're
your
working
own
in
food.
community with people, it's like, hey, I'll grow this, you grow that. I mean,
Yeah.
we have our own little group of people. We're kind of like planning the 10-year plan. Like, okay, we're gonna start here. 5 years, we'll all buy land. And it's
Yes,
so fun
that's
because it's so
awesome.
much better to do when you have other people who are on that vision with you and not, you know,
Yeah.
you like the one really big choice you have to make and like, or a really big pivot that we had to make was like, we had to start surrounding ourselves with those types of people and like
Yeah.
stop trying to, you know, finagle these relationships where they're like trying to like, they're kind of telling you you're crazy or they're trying to, you know, we just kind of pivoted and like found friends who really are on that. And we still love our friends as well, but we realized like, okay, we need the permaculture friends and the, you know, that we want to be able to help each other and learn from each other, but it's also just so much more motivating and yeah, like just communal and you feel like you're not alone in
Yeah.
it. So
Yeah.
I feel like I can see that that's what you're building online, which is so fun. And I feel like that's why being an introvert, it doesn't really matter so much whenever you're like when you have something you're really passionate about and people are wanting
Yeah.
to learn or wanting to connect or wanting, you know, whatever, share information. It just like the introvert is like gets all like, yes, this is
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
so I feel
And we
you.
have one amazing neighbor next to us, and that's something I tell people when you're looking for land too, is make sure you meet your neighbors before you buy the land, because some of
Yep.
them you might not want to be neighbors with,
Yep.
but
Yep.
some of them are really awesome, and you want some awesome people around you. But we only have one right now, so I'm needing some more in this community. So if
Okay,
anybody
reach
wants
out
to
to Tara.
move,
Yeah.
come
She'll help you
on.
find land in the desert. I really
Thank
appreciate it.
you.
And please let's schedule another interview soon because we have so many different topics we could dive into.
Oh, yeah, we could. Thank you so much for
Yep.
having me.
Bye.
Bye.
You're listening to The Wave Forward.